Good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world, and thank you for signing up to this evening's webinar. It's another C4 Atelier webinar, and as always, we focus on the three pillars that we find very relevant to what we do, and that is conservation, photography, and travel. And this evening, we're really going to be jumping around between photography and travel, and within that, a lot of inspiration. That's what I get out of this talk here. I've got two very great guests with me, Samantha and Martin Osner. They're a father and daughter team that is very dynamic. And I'd like to introduce you to them in a short background information, with some short background information, just for you to give a sense of what and where they come from. But first, you know that last year there were over 1 trillion photographs taken, and that equates to 3,700 photographs per second. That's a lot of information that every user, every person in this world has to distill. So with this ever-improving technology and people's quick prowess, their reflexes, how do you get images that stand out from the rest? How do you unleash that creativity within? Martin and Sam are the guys that are going to explain that to us this evening. Just in way of some background, Martin is a name that has been involved in photography for a large portion of time, based in South Africa. When I say a large portion of time, he's not a dinosaur. He's been around for a long time, but more importantly, it's his work that stands out and has stood out over a long period of time. And if you consider the transition from film into digital, and then even more into very fast-paced photography that we see today, to have your work stand out across a broad period of time like that really is a legacy and a testament to his work. He brings to his work a certain flair, and that is linked to the creative approach that he always has taken. Over the years, he spent lots of his time teaching and tutoring students in the art of photography. They're not only local, they range broadly across the world, and many of his students are today still international students. If you want to see more of his work, of course, there is a website that Martin has, but he also hosts a studio and a gallery in print form that we actually see the images physically hanging on a wall from Hout Bay in South Africa. Samantha may seem a young soul, but she's a mature and experienced artist. And she cut her teeth initially in the corporate world of photography. And that presented a number of challenges to her, but also gave her a number of solutions which she uses today in her photography. And those critical elements are lighting and how it can alter the mood of a photograph, and then how you capture that in a moment in time, never to be repeated. She is quite broad in her genre allocation. She works in fine art, mixed media, and landscape photography. You can find her work in the Republic of Hout Bay at the same gallery. It's called the Osner Private Gallery, where she exhibits alongside with her dad. So Martin and Sam, welcome to this evening. And I think welcome to the fact that we are going to unleash the creativity within.
Thank you, Shem. Thank you. It's an honor to be on your platform this evening, and I really hope we can bring some benefit to some people to release their creativity and to start to enjoy their photography, perhaps on another level. Let's see. Good.
Thanks. So here I'm going to bring in some photographers that were recently on the art retreat that you ran with Sam in September this last year. And love to hear their insights and their input, as well as look at their photographs of what the experience was like, and then walk us through some of their photographs. So I'm going to start in the order of which the photographs of the people are on the gallery in front of me. So Kathy, welcome and thank you for this evening. We're going to move to Kathy and chat about her experience and her photographs on the retreat, which should be popping up right now. And Kathy, thank you for joining. I just have a question for you before you start talking about your photographs, is that Martin and Sam worked with two broad approaches, working in the studio and working outdoors. Which of the two in your approaches did you enjoy the most?
Well, I think in all my photography, I'm definitely an outdoor person. And I really enjoy getting out, especially around this course. There's such a beautiful property to actually be able to just walk and explore. And it's not often that we actually do get out, even though I am a landscape photographer, but to actually be able to get out and walk by yourself and to experience the outdoors is just my best. I really enjoy that. Not to say that I don't enjoy the techniques that are in the classroom, so to speak, because you really do get challenged. I enjoy both, actually. It's part of the best with being with Martin and Sam.
Well, in an environment like you were in, you get inspired by the environment because you're walking outdoors, a lot of nature, and you come across scenes like this. Yeah.
Well, this is I do a lot of macro photography, and these are little. I like, because I was actually feeling quite tired on the course, I spent a lot of time on my bum, which was actually quite good. And these are little grass flowers that I took in a multiple exposure. And Martin's technique of getting back into the classroom and challenging us to come up with a different way of presenting photographs. So this is one of his techniques that he uses. Really enjoyable, challenging as well.
And the color contrast is really lovely there. The yellows versus the dark foreground. And this is almost an opposite. It's a very simplistic photograph, it seems.
Well, that is just one. I love most of my photography is actually quite simple. I love photographing flowers and just the single little plant against quite a harsh background is kind of a juxtaposition, which I really enjoy when I'm looking at my photography. So I think this represents that juxtaposition quite nicely.
Yeah, and we're using the wrong term all the time. We're talking about photography, where this is very much not photography.
Yes, it is, but enjoyable.
Very much so. Yeah, and immediately what strikes me here is the light coming in, and then these white diagonals coming in from the right-hand side.
Well, Martin again was challenging me to actually look at things differently. So this is one of his techniques that he taught, sort of like an in-camera movement. And the scene presented itself. It was really beautiful. The sun was setting down the valley, and there were a lot of michis flying in the air. So I took a photograph, and this is the outcome of it. Yeah. Quite different, quite dark, but I really enjoy the visual of this photograph.
Yes, and I think it's a sheep. It looks like a sheep, how that just stands out.
And cow. Cow.
Okay, the beauty is, as the viewer, I don't need to know, but I'm attracted to it. So that's, I think, a large part of it. Yeah.
It is. It's really exciting working with these two. They do challenge you on many levels. And I really enjoy this course. As I say, coming from a landscape point of view, to actually be challenged to this level is really lovely.
Bessie, I'm going to now bring up your photographs. There we go. And if you can also talk to us that besides your photography, I've learned and heard that you also paint. So how did this experience at the art retreat, coming in with both skills, how did that affect you with a photographer and a painting, a person who paints and uses a paint for artwork? What was that contrast like for you?
To me, it was almost like two spheres coming together, two halves coming together, and just opening up into a whole new world, which was very, very enjoyable, very stimulating. It's almost like opening a door in your brain and getting hold of different elements and putting it together and then eventually sort of getting into a very pleasable and a happy space to be. So I really enjoyed it so much.
And this looks very much like a multiple exposure that you are rotating around the subject. You can see like the central core of the tree there, and then is that what's happened in this image?
That is actually 3 times multiple exposure, where the one exposure is taken as a normal exposure, and then you blur the next exposure, but you try and keep it in the same level that you're taking the photo. And then the last one is just a small movement, so intentional camera movement. And then the camera, it's in camera, and then you get the result exactly the way it comes out, like that. The only difference was that the leaves were very green. So we just changed the color in the editing program, so that so just to make it a bit more warmer. So yeah, that's the only thing we changed.
I was just about to comment that you guys timed it correctly for the autumn colors, and then you.
That's a bietjie gekroek, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Would you like to continue on this photograph here?
Thank you. This was at the retreat. There's a lovely little river running through the place, and on the opposite side of the river, you get these lovely trees when the light falls on them, and they really just come out. So this was also a technique that was taught to us by Martin, and then I just desaturated it a bit. So that is also one of the techniques that he teaches. Yeah.
And I
The
think
desaturated look really gives it a colder, cooler feel to you. So you feel like you're looking into winter. That's what I get here. Yeah.
Autumn and winter on one place.
In one place, yeah. With an amazing amount of texture.
Yeah, this was a lovely technique that was taught by Martin, and this involved a little bit of painting with watercolors as well, and taking numerous photos and putting it onto each other, and eventually coming up with something unique that does not look like a normal photo. And the nice part about this is that it's actually a whole process getting there. And each process you think, no, this is not going to work. And then you think, oh, well, that looks quite good. And then eventually you do get to the final product, and it's really quite pleasing. It really is. What I would just like to say is accept everything that you do learn from Martin and Sam. And they are both wonderful teachers and very, what is the right word? They have a lot of patience with you going through the process. But the other people on the retreat as well, you learn so much from them as well. So you really grow, not just as an artist or photographer, but as a person as well. So it's a great opportunity to actually revive yourself, if I can put it that way. Yeah.
I would imagine, especially when people are exploring their creative side, we've got like-minded people all in the same headspace, but obviously going in different directions, because we have all our own objective ways of expressing ourselves.
Yes, that one, it's very true that you've said. So it was a great opportunity, and you feel like now every day I just feel like taking photos and mixing them up and doing something with them. So it was really great. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Bessie. Andre, I'm going to bring up your photos in a second. I'd love to hear about them.
I think whilst you bring up the photos, just to say that, I had the privilege to attend Martin's fine art courses. So I think that helped me a bit to move away from just, the normal sharp photos that you take and to try and actually, experiment with it, because, I've got the wrong side of the brain. I'm financially orientated, so always wanted to be a painter. But and I think some of the techniques that Martin has actually taught us, it feels like, and he always says it's a compliment when somebody tells you, it looks like a painting. And for instance, this picture, is also part of the techniques that where watercolor was involved. And ultimately, you get this kind of feeling which is totally different to the original photo. So yes, I think the fine art courses that I did before, this was a cherry on the cake, and I really enjoyed that you've got the theoretical part and the technical part. And for me, the other beauty was working the other courses with Martin only, but to have Sam there as well and to see how father and daughter is actually complementing each other, and we learned from both of them. But it was nice, to sit in the classroom and get the classes on the technical stuff, but then to go out, in that environment, to go and practically, implement this was amazing.
Yeah, and it must be quite a headspace change, I would imagine, because as a photographer, you would feel so technically minded when you get the photograph sharp. It's got to be composed correctly. Where this seems to be a process of exploration.
Definitely, and like I said, if I just walked into this one fresh, I think it would have been more difficult for me. But I got that mind shift space in the other fine art courses that I did, which I would also encourage people to do, because it helped me quite a lot. I'm more landscape photographer and looking for the sharp pictures, but I've now learned how to mess it up and look good.
It's a great quality to have. Yeah. And to me, this picture of more an abstract, you hardly realize is a tree, because the textures of the whole image are so similar to each other. There's a slight color graduation between the two. And that's really impressive about this photograph.
Yeah, no, thanks. And again, it's also a different technique. And, so the first step was to go and find some images in nature, that we can use to overlay. So that also taught us to actually go and have a look around in nature. So we weren't allowed to use old photos to bring in as overlays. So part of the technique was to find, and my first batch, I must be honest, of texture that I took didn't work. So, and again, coming back to the point that I think Bessie made, that Martin is very, very helpful and guide you to say what would work or maybe work. But again, this is also all done in camera, so not a lot was done in Photoshop.
Yeah, that is incredible. Wow. Yeah, as a photographer, I would never think that this could come from a camera itself. And before you start discussing this one, Andre, I heard a story that you fell and hurt your arm on the retreat, then you drove somewhere nearby to a small town for an x-ray, you returned in a plaster cast, and you continued.
Yeah, I know.
Like a lot of dedication.
I've tried to actually save my camera equipment, and I've hurt myself, so and the problem with my model is that the spare parts are very scarce, so but it was it wasn't something that I was going to miss, so no, I had to go back and complete it, so I said to them, there's only two things I started in life that I never completed, and that is a crossword puzzle and a normal puzzle, so. But this photo, we were given the task in the morning to go in forest and, not really know what we're going to do with it. So all the things we had to gather, and it was quite interesting to see some of the people unpacking their stuff. It was very nice. I really enjoyed it. And the different things that people actually forest, to come and actually implement and add it to a photo. So this is also a photo on in the area where we had the retreat, where I actually went to photograph the old building there, and then so Martin gave me the idea to make sort of a windmill out of a flower with the stuff that I forest, and so this was also very interesting to do things physically on a printed photo. and ultimately get something that looks, you know, sort of almost real but unreal, and give the 3D effect. Also a very, very nice exercise that I've enjoyed quite a lot.
A very strong 3D effect, this illusion of going into the actual the image itself. You get drawn into the photograph because of the windmill standing out so strongly. Andre, thank you so much for sharing that. And in addition to that, thank you for returning to the retreat with your spare parts intact and working.
So brave.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
It definitely shows the dedication of photographers and in this instance, mixed media artists to their task.
Yeah,
I really
I could also just tell you that all the X-rays and all the hospitals cost me more than the retreat, you know. So.
Oh, shame.
Linda.
Hi.
Hi. There we go.
That looks familiar.
It looks familiar. But you came into this this retreat with a very much a strong wildlife photography background. And do you feel you were able to apply what was taught in your wildlife photography to what you expressed in these 3 photographs that we're going to show here?
Shem, yes, it is an area I'd like to explore more from the wildlife side. I don't know how strong a wildlife photographer I am. It's just a genre that I have explored, as well as landscape. Although I do think my first passion is still landscape. But the frustration for me, you know, I come from a very different background from some of the other people on the panel here today, in that I have never, ever in my life done anything arty. In fact, I've been quite afraid of it. And I am a bit of a perfectionist by nature. And what I found with my photography, and having spent a few years sort of coming through club photography and that, is that it was making me very critical of my work, and everything had to be perfect or else it just wasn't good enough. And I got to the stage where I wasn't prepared to submit photos if I wasn't 100% happy with them. And in fact, I was getting to the point where if the light wasn't perfect, I didn't want to take the camera out. So this whole experience with Martin and Sam has been like a total mind twist, because it's opened my eyes to other aspects of creativity that I never even knew I had. You know, I've always seen myself as pretty much sort of, it's black or white, or it's I am more of an analytical thinking person. And yeah, this has been, it was an amazing experience from that aspect. And where I see I can possibly apply it with wildlife is to take, you know, if you're a professional photographer or full-time photographer, you've got more time to spend time out in the fields than if you've got a day job, you know, and living in the city. So whether it's wildlife or whether it's landscape or whatever, your opportunity to shoot is quite limited. And what this course has done for me is it has opened avenues. First of all, I've learned, yes, beautiful light is beautiful light, but the light's not perfect. It doesn't mean you still can't get enjoyment out of the camera. And with wildlife, it's quite rare to get that really magical, perfect shot of the animal with the right light and the right move, and he's facing the right way and he's looking right at you, and you don't have his bum view. And it's time consuming to get that shot. Whereas with the techniques that Martin has taught, I think there's an opportunity to use wildlife photography in a way that is quite unique, in that you would be able to now use the different techniques, use different compilations to actually express more the mood of an animal, and to actually say more than it just being a little picture of a bokkie standing somewhere in the bush. So there's tremendous scope for wildlife photographers to do that. And it's since doing the Swellendam Retreat, I'm now on one of Martin's fine art courses. So I'm doing it in the reverse way compared to, and I'm actually playing around with the rhino shot that I took at the moment, and it's going to come out totally different to the way I took it. And rhinos are animals that are quite close to my heart. So it's an opportunity for me to actually say something about the situation in the countries, to say something about our wildlife. So it really has been total door opening for me, for someone who's not arty. So, you know, for anyone out there who's thinking, oh, I don't paint and I'd never lifted a paintbrush in my life kind of thing. And it's fun.
Yeah, well, I think maybe just the pathway or the door to your creative side maybe hasn't been unlocked until you came on this retreat, because these images we're looking at have got a significant amount of creativity, and now you must just walk that pathway more often to keep the path open and clear until it becomes a highway of information.
Problem now is my business is interfering with my hobbies. And I'm not nearly as passionate about the business as I am about photography, actually.
This image here has a lovely mood to it, and I love the sky, the ripple effects or the waviness of the sky, and that's mirrored into the water, so you get the same texture in the water with that beautiful aquamarine color. Also, then, so you got the colors complementing each other in addition to the ripples or that lovely texture there. It's incredible.
To be honest, I think that was more fluke than pre-planned intention, but yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And here, this looks like a motion blur or an intention to move, to create this ghostly effect. Ghostly.
It was, yeah, there was some motion involved there, but I just love the fact that it's just almost looks ethereal to me. And you know, when you're actually in the place where the retreat is held, yes, it's beautiful, but it certainly doesn't look like that. And I really came away. I mean, I've been going through the photographs I took during that week, and there are others that I love even more. And if only I had the time on the retreat to process them then. I actually even ventured, I mean, I haven't even told Martin and Sam this, but I actually ventured to put one into Camera Club weeks ago, and it actually did really well, so believe it or not. And yeah, the possibilities are endless. You know, I wouldn't put everything into Camera Club, but I was scraping the barrel and I needed to find the next, and I thought, let's try it. And yeah, so the valley is beautiful, but what you get out of it is just so much more, both in terms of what Martin said teach, in terms of how it's changed me personally, how it's changed my outlook on a hobby that I really do enjoy, and how it's, I dare to say, changed my outlook on life, because I'm looking at things differently. And I know it's early days, but it's a beginning of a journey that I'm really, really excited about.
Geez, that's fantastic. That really is fantastic. And I'm the first one to say that photography can change your life. And then within that, I mean, also the creative side of photography is good, because once you explore the possibilities, you realize that this medium and these mediums can entertain you as an artist and as a creative forever.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm very glad that the wildlife photography sort of thread has been put down and not on hold, but it's stopped for a while, that you're now exploring in this retreat. I'm now going to move on to our final participant who's joining us, which is Gail. And Gail and I are sharing something very special right now, because we're both from Pretoria. And I'm hearing a thunderstorm developing. It's the first thunderstorm of the season developing. And a couple of drops have just fallen. around us. We've got thunder and lightning all around us right now, which I wasn't really expecting, but that's great. It's so I hope you're also hearing it, Gail, because for us it's a very exciting moment when the big storms start arriving, and we've been living in a bit of a heat wave too, so that will be nice respite.
Yeah. I am hearing it, and I'm also just watching for the lightning because my laptop is plugged in, and we have a tendency here that the lightning strikes something and then upends everything. So I'm hoping it doesn't strike the laptop. So
yeah, that's another Pretoria and Johannesburg speciality, is unplug all your devices during the thunderstorms.
Yeah.
Gail, you, from what I understand, you've attended all of Martin's fine art classes. Some of them more than once. So,
I'm a sucker for punishment. What can I say?
okay, great.
No.
That's good. Well, there's obviously the punishment is paying off, and this is the retreat has been set up as something separate and different to those classes. How did that compare to you?
I think it was like Andre who said, the advantage that I found doing this retreat is the fact that you've already had the knowledge of Martin's teachings and guidance, and getting you off the beaten track of what people consider the norm and to be a perfect photograph. I started off as thinking I would be a landscape photographer or wildlife photography, and it just becomes boring after a while, and everything kind of looks the same old. And I also like to challenge myself in the fact that Martin will say, you need to try something, he'll give us ideas in class, and then he'll say, don't do this because it's not going to work. And then I'm like, well, I need to prove Martin wrong. And then I will try something, and it either works or I get an effect. So I just found that added part of the journey, and it's just so liberating to go out there and just photograph and feel what you're photographing. So like taking this, for example, I didn't have the right camera gear, but also something I've learned from Martin, and he's always said it, when you're out in the field or you're out photographing, you have to make what you have with you work for you. So I had lots of people offering me lenses, and I was like, no, I will somehow get this technique to work. It's maybe not perfect as in how Martin would have wanted it, but I don't know, I just enjoyed it. So it's just another in-camera, another experience of how you can actually just use something in camera, and it works, and it gives you, something, and you can do some tweaks in post-production, and something I enjoy.
I love your comment there. You say how you create images or compose images to how they make you feel. I love that statement and that sentiment when you are creating images, because images should make you feel something. If they're not making you feel anything, they're not doing their job. And those are the ones that just pass by. Yeah. This has got an amazing texture to it, but also at the same time, amazing simplicity to it.
Right. This image I was fascinated by this tree, and Martin had suggested that we would need a landscape photograph for the next day. So I was watching the sunset. Again, I was watching the light. And I just went and stood in the field for, I don't know, it must have been close to an hour, just trying to get this photograph, the image that I wanted. But in the meanwhile, I was playing around with the different textures that we had been taking on the Monday afternoon. And Martin had a very sort of set ideas about what these textures should be or shouldn't be. And I think Martin will agree that this is one of those where it doesn't quite meet the brief that he set out for us, but it works with the image that I've presented. And then so a lot of it is, or most of it is in camera. And then with the help of Sam in post-production, just tweaking a few things because there were a few things that weren't quite correct, and we just sort of tweaked that. And yeah, it's again something, I don't know, it's a photograph that speaks to me. I love the tree, I love the sun, coming out in the back, and then the textured overlay also just creates a mountain that actually wasn't there, or dip in a mountain that wasn't actually there. So it's just created a whole different image. So
yeah, the simplicity of that line and that curve which goes through the image and separates the dark with the light, and then the tree holding the image as a subject, married with the texture of the lichens, is really, really amazing. That you with the texture of the lichens, but the simplicity is another contrast that complements each other, which they often can do. And your final photograph here.
So this was a landscape. This was part of the homework that Martin had given us, and we needed to find a landscape photograph that we would be using to create another piece of work. And I used what I initially thought when I was going through the photographs I'd taken. There wasn't really anything that was speaking to me at the time, but then I kind of sort of set my heart on this one, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And again, like Linda says, I also come from a background, I don't have a background in art or painting or anything. I'm a total novice, and I have a mind of my own, and I do what I'd like to do. And there were challenges, where, especially with the water and the lilies on the water and everything, and I just, just let go, and I just used and tried techniques and colors that I thought would work. And at the end of the day, I just, again, it's something that just worked, and I love it. I wasn't sure how I felt about it when I started working on it, but my end result is something that I really, really love.
Yeah, and you mentioned at the start when you were talking about how composing images to feel, and the word that comes to me is serene here. That's the adjective that comes to mind when I see this photograph. And if you are capable of doing that in your imagery, regardless of whatever medium you're doing, then I believe you're doing your job. You're creating adjectives out of an image to show that people look at and they go, wow, this is words that come to my mind, because that's the feel they get from it.
Thank you, Shem.
Gail, thank you very much.
I just want to just say at this point that I would also recommend anybody who wants to break out of a mold and try something different. And if they've done, even if they haven't done any of Martin's other fine art courses, I would highly recommend they do something like this retreat. It's so liberating. And I think it was Bessie who said that, we learn from one another. We all have different techniques. We all have different visions, but yet we're all drawn to one another's work in some way or another. And it's just encouraging. And we learn, it's like kind of, why didn't I try that or something like that? But I would highly recommend this course to anybody out there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great vote for Samantha and Martin's work and their input. Okay, Kathy, Bessie, Andre, Linda, and Gail, thank you very much for your inputs and your insights into your photographs, but also then what happened and how your experience with Samantha and Martin on the retreat. I hope it shows everybody that's watching just what it's meant to you guys, the results, but also just the experience itself. So I'm going to continue our conversation now with the two stars of the show and get to hear from them what the retreat really entails. So Martin, we've spoken about mixed media, we've spoken about cameras and photographs. What does that actually entail? If for somebody that hasn't been on a retreat, when you talk about mixed media and photographs and scratching and sand and glass, give us a feel for what that physically entails.
Yeah, I think first of all, Shem, thanks. I suppose when we talk about what we're doing, it's important just to understand that the camera is part of a creative process. So the camera is no longer really seen as the final instrument to deliver an image. And there's nothing, I mean, that's one of the beauties of photography in any case, is you know, the classic way of photographing and being able to walk away with a print straight off. This certainly doesn't debunk that. But I think what is very important is that for this type of photography, the camera is part of a process. It delivers a certain job. And then I mean, you kept using the word mood when you were talking to, you know, to the participants and looking at their work. And I think that's the important part. That's really what this does, is it's able to take the photograph from a classic, you know, sort of science, maths, chemistry type look and feel, move it from total reality now into painterly abstraction. So it crosses that boundary, and I think that for me is the exciting part of what we actually do. And yes, to get there, we do crazy things, but then art knows no boundaries. So we're just doing what normally comes to artists.
Yeah, and in the natural world, we look at elements of nature to create mood. Rain, dust, mist, snow, all these inclement weather conditions. And so from the results we've seen, you're actually creating that mood very much from the mixed media part. Yes. Scratching, and then, yeah, so you create that mood there.
You must remember I think it's true to say that when you're coming out of a pure photographic background, and I mean, I've come out of that too. I mean, I've spent, I don't know, most of my career shooting technically proficient imaging in commercial photography and what have you. And now your big boundaries to cross for me is distortion, it's color and texture. Those are the three big ones to move over. And there's almost like a fence in the middle, and you can't do it half-heartedly, otherwise it looks like a mistake. So I suppose on the retreat, that's really what happens. And you've heard from the comments as well that I think there's a breakthrough that comes with that. And it almost, I don't know if you would agree, Sam, but it tends to free up photographic anxiety. So, you know, on day one, when the guys get told that we're not looking at any photographs that were taken prior to it, we're basically starting with a completely cleaned memory card, and they get told what happens if we find pictures that have been brought in from the past, just to make sure that everybody knows we're quite serious about this. There's a bit of anxiety, and then slowly but surely, as the results start to happen and people start to see, and I think Linda said that, I don't know if it was Linda or it was Bessie, but who said, you know, you learn so much from the other guys' work and what they're doing. So sooner or later, everybody sort of gets on the wagon and we start to be able to move forward. So, and that's what breaks these boundaries. So when you return back to normal photography life, I think you're a lot freer. I think you become a lot freer, and you have a lot more that you can actually turn to create interesting pieces of work.
Yeah, that's fantastic as an approach to have. But Sam, being the younger of the pair, can you see a difference between your approach versus that of your father's? I'm sure you've seen him at work, you've studied, you've been involved with his imagery on the walls and of galleries and probably your house for many years. And so now you bringing yourself into the role, can you see a difference in the approach?
Yeah, so I'd say we definitely have differences in our approach, but definitely some similarities too. I mean, obviously he comes from an age of film photography where I was straight into digital. So I think for me, experimenting was far easier and quicker for me to achieve now than it was for my dad to do back in the day. So experimenting, trying things, trying to just release that control that comes so naturally with photography.
Yeah, and the film guys, we always used to call ourselves purists,
Exactly.
Especially when the digital transition happened.
Yes.
We would like, oh no, you can't touch a photograph. But the digital photographers were like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
The the camera comes with a program called Photoshop, you like, so editing program, they're hand in hand, yeah. So there was no boundary between them at all. Yeah,
I think also what Sam's probably saying is that in the days when we would photograph on film, we only really found out 2 weeks later what we had done. And very often we weren't even sure if what we had handed in for processing when it came back, whether it was your own. So to then try to remember what sort of creative
What you've done.
you've actually gone ahead and tried is a lot more challenging than with digital photography. So I think that is important to understand that as well. And for her, yes, coming in with digital, the experimentation is instant. Your result is instantly in front of you, and you can now try to fix it and work around it. I suppose that also has its dangers, but I guess, today we need to embrace what we have as well. But I suppose being involved in film photography makes me the better of the fine art photographers, which most people.
Hope springs eternal. Yeah. Yeah. And Sam, what's your role in the retreat? And in addition to that, what do you find that you see the clients enjoy about it? Day one, everyone's arriving semi-nervous, not knowing what to be aware of.
Yeah, you see that because from day one, we start with creative work, but we do ease them in quite gently. But you can see towards the end of the week, they're more open to trying new things, experimenting, not so scared to make mistakes. And my role in the course is really just assisting my dad, making sure everything's in order, making sure everything in the office is in order, and then also just catering to the students one-on-one. I really enjoy helping them one-on-one, really seeing what they need or what they're battling with, and just helping them along with that. Yeah.
Great. Well, what I think is the right moment right now is to actually watch a video that you put together of the art retreat, which I'm not going to say anything other than press play and let the viewers see what it was all about. So here we go. Martin, last question. How do you think that you and your daughter complement each other on the workshop, when you are working together?
Yeah, it's a good question too, Shem. Look, first of all, to present this type of workshop, and it's quite intense day in and day out. I mean, the guys actually would agree with me that you leave quite tired, artistically drained as well, because you've had a really good go at that, but also physically. And to be able to take a group of 7, 8 people, and to be able to do that on your own is I wouldn't even attempt it. So I think that's the one part that's so important to me. And the thing is, she's worked with me long enough to know exactly what is needed and where is needed. So she runs ahead and gets all of that sorted out. So we are very similar, because we do live under the same, or we work under the same roof in the same studio. So it's always just comforting to know that you don't have to teach that person something while you're actually teaching other people, that they can actually go and do it themselves. Yeah. So yeah, invaluable. And then she's got a style of her own as well, which I think rubs off on everybody too. When she says she goes and does little one-on-one little counselings and that, very often they come back with a little bit of Sammy in there. And I know exactly what she's actually trying to say is, yeah, you step aside, I'll sort this out. And you can assist me.
Well, I really enjoy Sam's work. When I see it posted intermittently, you've got a really strong style, Sam. So I hope it is rubbing off on, and it's a very individual style. Yeah. So I hope it's rubbing off on many people that you work with and are tutoring into the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that brings us to the end of this webinar that we've done, Unleashing Your Creativity. I would like to remind people that we do have a date for next year's art retreat, which is the 15th to the 22nd of September 2023. You're welcome to contact us. You're welcome to contact Martin and Sam if you'd like to know more about it and to book on the actual retreat itself. But from our side, we'd like to say thank you very much to everybody for listening in to this webinar. And once again, thank you very much to all the participants who contributed so invaluably to share their experience of what the webinar was like. So wherever you are, thank you very much, and good evening, good night, and goodbye.